on my town. The cream box smiles, no frowns around. Soft and sweet, with a glowing hue. It's the perfect snack for me and you.
Hello everyone, welcome.
Radioactive cream box, oh what a treat. The core is still melting, but this bread is sweet. Fukushima's gift, just take a bite. Nothing's wrong here, it's all alright. Alright.
Hello, welcome back to Madness. It's called Radioactive Cream Box. It's about a story of Japan selling food from a nuclear wasteland and targeting children. Hello everybody, I'm Dana. Should you avoid eating Japanese deadly nuclear food so you don't get radiation sickness and die like all the species worldwide? La 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 la. That's in the wrong spot. We'll get there. Whoo-wee. Here we go. Early show tonight. Just burnt out. Afraid if I don't do it now, I won't do the show. So if I do it now, then it's too late for me to. I'm in the wrong spot here. So the first story tonight is crazy. Chernobyl farmland found fit for farming decades after a nuclear disaster. That's not what the story is going to tell you at all. That's what the headline told you. So you see, study confirms effective dose to the workers, the agricultural workers, the humans, is below the Ukraine's national safety threshold. So it's not the food, it's the workers. It's the external. The story is about the external doses of radiation to the farmers / workers. Dr. Schmidt, do you remember him? Jim Schmidt? From the University of Portsmouth in the United Kingdom? My goodness, these people just relentlessly pro-nuclear to the point where get sick and die is their motto, I would imagine. Ukrainian farmland abandoned after Chernobyl is fit for agricultural. Another study by the crazies, Jim Smith, the University of Portsmouth. These people, like, the United Kingdom should be charging these people. This is, if I give you poison, that's murder, right? And you die, that's murder. Chernobyl exclusion zone of 4,200 square kilometers around the nuclear plant remains uninhabited to this day, except for the farmers. This industry is insane. I can't comprehend why the world is not going to war against this industry. This industry is poisoning you everywhere you look. Is now one of Europe's largest natural reserves. It's not a reserve, for goodness sakes. Like, and they'll tell you, they'll say, oh, it's in wildlife. There's bears and there's elk and there's wolves. It's the same thing every time. They say the same words every time. These are migratory animals coming through a nuclear wasteland. They can't read the sign that says "Do not enter." Right? They're animals. But so therefore, it's a nature reserve. Every nuclear dump, by the way, every time you hear the word nature reserve, be very careful before you go there. Do some friggin' research. Radiation levels in the region declined significantly. Yeah, I'll turn to fairy dust, Dan. It's like bananas and potato chips now. I swear. Honestly, I swear. A new study published in the Reg of Journal of Environmental Radioactivity. This is garbage journal, by the way. Elsevier, Springer, and Wiley has 22,000 journals. Right, some of the journals are what they call disposable companies, so they can publish stuff like this. They get into trouble, they just go bankrupt, right? You don't go after, you can't. They're isolated from the actual orchestrators. Confirmed the crops can be grown safely on most of the land in a nuclear wasteland. These people are nuts. They're totally committed to poisoning every human on the planet with radiation. In every direction you can imagine. Your water, your food, your medicine becomes radioactive because they grow it in a nuclear wasteland. Researchers assessed around 100 acres. You're going to do a whole study on 4,200 square kilometers by extrapolating documentation from 100 hectares. A typical academic is insane. Contamination level predicted the uptake of the radio substances by the common crops such as potatoes, cereal, maize, and sunflower. Researchers measuring external gamma, not alphas, not neutrons, not betas, not X-rays, confirmed the effective radiation dose to the workers. Not the food, but workers. The story's not meant for you to run out and buy this stuff, right? It's not available anyway. It's meant to slowly indoctrinate you that this could be somehow magically put back to what it was before the nuclear industry destroyed it for 1 billion years. The fake researchers found that the radiation amount was significantly lower. You love this one. This is absurd that anybody would even say this. Chernobyl radiation is lower than the background radiation everywhere else worldwide. There's no science to quantify that, to back that up. It doesn't work that way. It's equivalent to taking a banana and putting it by a fuel rod that's gone through a chain reaction, and saying now the fuel rod is safe because you got a banana there. Bear with me. My tummy's giving me a hard time here. Let's keep going, but I'll figure it out in a minute, maybe. Or I won't. I'll figure it out some other time. So the anthropogenic man-made radiation is lower than the natural stuff. It doesn't work that way. Because natural radiation, you can't read it on a Geiger counter. Like my Geiger counter up there is not reading natural stuff, okay? It's anthropogenic man-made. And it's just gamma, not reading alphas, neutrons, and betas. But it's if there's a single atom of cesium-137, for instance. Everybody heard of that, because that's basically all they really tell you about is cesium for some reason. It's natural. It's not natural, rather. It's nasty, don't get me wrong. The biggest byproduct is the curium isotopes, not any other. All of them are horrifying. So cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet. And so that'll drown out the single of everything. Natural doesn't have a single. So they're saying there's nothing in Chernobyl nuclear wasteland whatsoever. The radiation dose is lower than the natural stuff you would have found pre-nuclear industry worldwide. These are academics, these are professors that are pumping out each year dozens of little sadistic demon students in the nuclear industry. Actual monsters. Because that's what happens to a nuclear student when he graduates. they're now officially a monster. And they know it, too. They're like, I got a degree now. Watch your world. All over the world. So the lowest radiation now worldwide is in the nuclear wasteland, 4,200 square mile exclusion zone known as Chernobyl. Can you wrap your mind around anything like this? This is how crazy the industry actually is. And there's no one to hold accountable. If we don't bring this up and say this is patently absurd, show you some documentation coming up, what Chernobyl actually is like, nobody will. There is nobody on the planet will show you this if I don't show up and do the work. Dr. Smith said that the methods developed here could be applied to other radioactivity contaminated sites. What method? By measuring the doses allegedly to the migrant farm workers. External gamma only, no betas, neutrons, alphas, to the agricultural workers. Once you measure the radiation doses in the children, in the hundreds and hundreds of orphanages of abandoned children post-Chernobyl, it's like 5,000 open-heart surgeries a year to children in Ukraine and Belarus because of radiation from Chernobyl each year. But the radiation is gone out in the farmers' fields. Yeah, the kids are all smurfed up. The influences of the post-Chernobyl fallout on birth defects, abortion rates in Austria. So you should check the dose over there. You can't even grow food in Austria by rights. Don't you see these pictures? These are abandoned children, discarded like paper towels because of the radiation has poisoned them and their genes. And they were born with congenital malformations, congenital heart diseases, and everything else. Trends in the human sex odds at birth in Europe. So they've done sex ratio studies on males and females, babies, post-Chernobyl in all of Europe. Because as they quantified how the entire population was irradiated, there's more males than females being born. But the first studies they really do is autism and Down syndrome and congenital diseases. These are the Chernobyl children that have been abandoned. Nuclear industry just burns money, but they won't give the victims in the orphanages even like a radio so they got something they can hear. That's how loving your nuclear industry actually is. Prenatal loss of 400 male fetuses in the Czech Republic. And the ones that were born were just brutally compromised. Secondary sex ratio and trends in associated gender-specific births near nuclear facilities in France and Germany. They do the sex ratio studies to quantify radiation poisoning. So if you got, by the way, you got more males than females. That's going to be true for all species, not just humans. And it's going to be more pronounced in the species on top of that. So less species and less humans. Professor Jim Smith should go tell the family, her foster family, if she's lucky enough to have one, how safe Chernobyl actually is. Non-thyroid cancers in northern Ukraine in the post-Chernobyl period. Non-thyroid cancers. There's not just cancers. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. And anybody on the planet that came in contact is typically producing radioactive stem cells and radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives, particularly the developing species and children, which are completely dependent upon hormones and stem cells, are now producing non-stop radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells because of this hateful, disgusting, parasitic industry, this gross and vile and sadistic terrorists like Jim Smith from Portsmouth University. Congenital Abnormality Registry in Belarus, a tool for assessing the public health impact of the Chernobyl. Go down and give these children, the nuclear industry should have to give every one of those children like a little PlayStation or something so they can be entertained, because they have nothing. They're abandoned because the nuclear industry doesn't want to deal with any side effects, because then they got to look in the mirror. See? Fallout from the Chernobyl accident, overall cancer in Finland because of Chernobyl, radioactive fallout. You really think it's limited to the 4,200 square kilometers around Chernobyl? Did you really think that? Did you really believe there's no adverse effects to the victims that are being born? Do you really think that? Down syndrome time clustering in January 1987 in Belarus. There's another study, I'm not sure if we'll get to it coming up here in a bit, of Scotland, the same exact study because of Chernobyl. It closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom, by the way, where retard Jim Smith lives. I'm surprised the parents of these victims don't go looking for him and sort him out. Children of Chernobyl, always remember the children affected by the nuclear disaster. There's too many to count. These foundations, like this lady here, they raise funds in the United Kingdom for open heart surgery for congenital heart diseases for the children of Belarus and Ukraine. It's like 30 years now. They're doing around 5,000 surgeries a year. Non-thyroid cancers in Belarus. It's not just cancer. Like the minute that you compartmentalize yourself to think of only cancer, is the minute it means you're still in denial of how radiation works. Chernobyl fallout and prenatal mortality, England and Wales, and which was a cover story for Windscale. Fallout effect, Sellafield, right? Chromosomes aberration, Norwegian reindeer. The reindeer in Latvia still can't be sold for consumption because of Chernobyl, right? Chernobyl. 256 assessment of the influence of Chernobyl and birth defects, abortion rates in Austria. It's horrific, folks. The nuclear industry is entire. Imagine what's going on in the animal kingdom, because we set up half-ass orphanages. These orphanages are underfunded, understaffed. The children have no toys to play with. They can't get any medical help whatsoever. It's just a storage facility for them. They're abandoned by their loved ones because they don't have the resources to take care of them. My heart goes out to those families and to the victims, clearly. Estimated lifetime, unlike the nuclear industry, which is heartless, is remorseless, man. It knows what's going to happen, right? On top of that, it looks forward to it. Estimated lifetime effective dose to hunters and their families in the 3 most contaminated counties in Sweden after the Chernobyl nuclear plant in 1996. Estimated lifetime effective dose to hunters and their families. Because it's like a banana, Dana, and potato chip. Oh, I didn't know that. Gee, that makes me feel better. You abandon all these children, and the nuclear industry won't even give them like a color TV or even a TV or even some kind of a video games to play, something to... Nothing. They're partying it up. They're going on vacations around the world. And the minute you bring up the Chernobyl orphanages, they're like, "You're anti-nuclear, aren't you, scum?" Difference in the effect of radiation and abundance of animals in Fukushima and Chernobyl. Like, we got the reports, and in the first number of years, there's total silence. And like I said earlier at the beginning, Chernobyl, the animals that you see are large migratory animals. You're not going to go into the forest and find insects. You're not going to go in there and find the typical prey-predator system. You're just going to find these migratory animals. It's a disgusting industry. And like, there's 1,000 public relation firms to protect the nuclear industry, to keep telling you lies. I mean, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency's. Half their job is feeding stories to the media to publish. It's very expensive, right? You have to pay the media. That's the kickback, right? They give the media the story, the journalists put their name on it from that particular media, takes the credibility of the story. These are very difficult stories to write, these cover stories. This story is Gerald A. Thomas. This is a known nuclear crank and a serial killer. She radiates children until they die. And then she jets around the world to nuclear accidents, tells people it's like a banana on a potato chip. And she's in charge of the Chernobyl tissue bank. Can you comprehend that statement? These are Chernobyl children orphanage or foundations that try to bring some comfort, because the nuclear industry has blacklisted all these orphanages from the medias and everything else. So they can't possibly get any kind of health care or any kind of recognition or any kind of fundraising. Incidences, that's how the industry works. It knows what's going on. It's not naive. It has all the checks and balances to ostracize the victims. Except for a random foundation. This is the United Kingdom Foundation. Once a year they'll go down and they'll take some children out of orphanages that have, they've never had any kind of help or attention, and bring them to the United Kingdom for a week or two to get them away from the cesspool that they live in their whole lives. These children, is the first time they've seen any kind of love in their lives. The nuclear industry has done everything to destroy them on top of that. It has public relations full-time dedicated to destroying the lives of the victims, including me. Japan has an operation called Operation Long Jump that is dedicated to targeting me, Dana Durnford. And they're really good at what they do. They have enormous budgets. They're very successful. I've got to give them credit. They give themselves credit. They're so pompous. Incidences of legal abortions. What about illegal then, I wonder? In Sweden after Chernobyl. Gee, why would people need to abort babies after Chernobyl, I wonder? Ionizing radiation and the human gender proportions at birth. Human gender proportions at birth. And the nuclear industry won't even give them socks to wear, for God's sakes. The nuclear industry refuses to acknowledge they exist, because then they got to look in the mirror when they wake up that next morning. They can't do it. Yeah, they're monsters, but they're extra special asshole monsters. They're inbreeds of inbreeds, right? They've never seen the damage, and the minute they see it, their brains will shut down on them. Legally induced abortions in Denmark. So what you're seeing here is Chernobyl just poison, destroys everything. Pregnancy outcome in Finland. Delayed effects of accidental radiation exposures 15 years after Chernobyl. Accidental, they called it. You're guaranteed to get exposed, no matter where you're to on the planet. The industry got 80 years of releases on you already. When are you going to gut up and kick them in the friggin' face every time you see them? When is that going to happen, I wonder? Pregnancy outcome in Norway. It's kind of a theme, isn't it? The nuclear fallout effect. Trends in birth-sex ratio. And research reactors are really tiny reactors. So why are you doing studies in birth and birth-sex ratio? Because you can't contain this stuff. The fuel pools have no containment. Once you take the reactor core and put it in the fuel pool, it's splitting atoms forever. My detractors should go down there and tell these children and how lucky they were poisoned by the nuclear industry. How lucky they are to become guinea pigs. Human sex ratio at birth in residential proximities, nuclear facilities in France. So they're looking at the entire population to quantify the study, because that's how come they got the money for the study, because the entire population had been polluted, consuming, breathing, drinking, awash, many times accidental, on purpose releases. You got all these orphanages in Belarus and Ukraine of abandoned children because of the nuclear industry. Disfigured on love, never understood what love was, no concept of it, never will. Will never have the luxury of toys, because the nuclear industry is so heartless. It refuses to deal with any of its issues. Population exposure from Hanford Nuclear Reservation. Releases. They dumped, just in one go during the Manhattan Project, 450 billion gallons in the 41 miles of unlined trenches right on the Columbia River. It's equal to an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. That's what 450 billion gallons is actually equal to. No, Dana, it all fits in the swimming pool, Dana. Notice they don't say that anymore since I've been around heavily the last decade. That was one of their most popular narratives, right? So was banana. Notice how rare it is to hear somebody say the word banana, because I'm going to come out and I'm going to lose my friggin' mind on them, because the rest of the world is too busy with their thumbs up their fucking arse. Come out and take on the real monster. If that was your kid and that's all they can do all day long because of the nuclear industry, how would you feel? Or would you be like his parents and just abandon them? Chernobyl cover-up. Cover-up. Most of the documentation on Chernobyl disappeared. Nobody knows where it went. It just disappeared. Radioactive fallout neural tube defects. So the real story will never be known. Radioactive fallout neural tube defect. You know neural tube? You know neural tube, right? Global implications of Chernobyl from the radioactive fallout. That's what they actually meant in that study. We've seen an increase of this stuff worldwide post-Fukushima on top of that. You know I'm right. Potential for disease initiation by inhaling beta-emitting, gamma-emitting, alpha-emitting, neutron-emitting nuclear particles. Orphanages after orphanage after orphanage is full of these kids. And no, nuclear has never hurt a single person's entire history. Dana, how dare you soil the name? My Geiger counter is high because of Chernobyl. No, boy, because of Fukushima. My Geiger counter can't measure the 220 million atoms of iodine-129 per liter rainfall. Which means some places per square meter are going to have several billion atoms of iodine-129 for at least 150 million years. It's never going to go away. It never turns to fairy dust. Bless those people, though, that went down and tried to give these children a human touch or a bit of love, something they've never conceived before. Nuclear industry made sure of that. They get nothing. Pregnancy outcome in Sweden after Chernobyl. You wonder why I have nightmares all the time, every friggin' night. Because I wallow in this excrement every day. The effects of the accident at the Chernobyl Atomic Energy Plant and the outcome of pregnancy. All these abandoned children. No, nobody, never hurt the fly. Nothing. Never hurt anybody, Dana. Dental abnormalities in people living in a radionuclide contaminated region. Not all of British have incredibly disfigured teeth. Just those highly radioactive areas, by the way. She didn't grow up in that. She's part of those United Kingdom foundations that try to bring some comfort to the victims that have been abandoned because of the nuclear industry's perpetual emissions. Abnormal retinal pigment is a major determination for radiation-induced congenital eye defects. You know, I think it's 4 out of every 10 children in Japan are born with one testicle now for the last 14 years. Yeah, but don't worry, you can get food from Chernobyl. None of this happened. Jim Smith said nothing happened, so therefore nothing happened. You can exclude all these academics that done all these studies in each one of these studies. Don't worry, nothing happened. Everything's safe down there. Right, Jim Smith from University of Portsmouth. Effects of radiation in the reproductive system. And catastrophic, right? Imagine what's happening to the species, birds and the insects and the animals, the mammals. Is that why they disappeared? Can you imagine what life would look like if we didn't have nuclear on this planet? Like, you'll be able to, right now, it'd be impossible not to see a whale every day, no matter where you go, in the ocean. Human sex ratio at births after atmospheric weapons testing. The study basically is quantifying that every human on the planet got irradiated because of weapons testing, which was a nuclear war. It's the same weapons, the same radioactive fallout. Down syndrome in Scotland. Schizophrenia because of radiation. Craving spinach. This was published 14 years ago, and this showed up. This is a real strange story. I'm sorry for those who are uninitiated. This is a very strange story. And what it was, this was a correction. So, IOL, craving spinach after Fukushima. This was a couple of days ago. I caught it after 4 hours after. I was like, what's this story about? And so when I came to the story, this is what I was looking at. It was a 14-year-old story. So why was that showing up in my 24-hour news cycle feed? Because they had made changes. And so I was reading through it. I couldn't figure out partial meltdowns, spewing, spinach. I don't know what was going on. So I looked up another version of the story, Personal Finance. It was the same author, but the paragraphs turned out to be different. Right, Press Reader. Also, I had the story. Press Reader it goes sideways instead of up and down, and makes it really hard to do the screen captures. So anyway, I went through that and I found a whole bunch of discrepancies, and I was still going. Let me go back to here for a second. Right, so I went through all of that story, and I was comparing it to the other story, and I started seeing all the kinds of stuff that was chopped out. So this was after Fukushima. Here we go. And the names of the author and the institutions. Center for International Governance Innovation. That was the original story, it turns out. Paul Blumstein. So what I done was I done a comparison, and anything I tried to figure out which words or sentences were chopped out, and this is what I ended up with. So be back on the market in a few months. Food from Fukushima, leafy green vegetables was chopped out of the new updated version. Perfectly safe and presumably, I gotta be able to, at low prices stemming from shoppers' charities or something. I don't know what that is. By the way, I'm Dana. You can call in at 709-589-4406 if you're inclined. Should you avoid eating food from a nuclear wasteland / Japan so you don't get sick and die? Is that a stupid idea? Is that crazy talk? Dana, that's crazy talk. Exodus from Japan of foreign bankers and other expats, soaring demand for iodine tablets, U.S. West Coast, were relatively harmless. These were the stuff they had chopped out of the original story. Disrupting the flow of goods in and out of the country because of radiation ships. Fukushima. Anything can account for the relatively calm among the Japanese over nuclear issue. NHK news programming made a single most important factor. Propaganda. The top water advisory was rescinded after radiation levels diminished. And then this one here. Oh, you keep the contaminated food off the market until the danger passes. The radiation danger never passes. The radioactivity in iodine Let me get the Geiger count away for a second. Almost completely degrades after a couple of months. That was one of the perpetual lies we've seen, right? Like misdirections, I should put it. Well, iodine 129, which is 31 to 1 ratio of iodine 131, doesn't disappear for 150 million years. And so, like, the biggest byproduct is going to be curium isotopes. That's going to be there for, that's got a 240 million year half-life or something. Incredible energy. You need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium. Although other isotopes spread around Fukushima may stay radioactive much longer, there are two reasons why that shouldn't be too worrisome, really. This was chopped out, right? Of the edited version that showed up a couple of days ago. First, scientific evidence indicate that those forms of radioactivity aren't potent carcinogenics. Wow. This is a complete lie. All anthropogenic man-made radiation, it's called man-made because it's not from the solar system. So your body doesn't recognize it, and your body is going to attack it for the rest of your life with white blood cells every second. And because it's man-made, it's going to pulse energy at the speed of light in every direction every second. The atom that's in your body, that's going to kill your chromosomes, DNA, cells. Your body's going to try to repair that every second. It can't keep up with that. You have all these mutated cells floating around, and DNA and chromosomes floating around. Your body's trying to repair everything, can't keep up with it, so it's flooded with white blood cells. It has attacked the single atom, and you could have 1 million in you. Anthropogenic stuff. See, like potassium-40 in the human is around 7,500 becquerels, what they call atoms, becquerels. You need an atom to pulse energy to create the becquerel. So 7,500 atoms. But yeah, that's all your body can hold. But man-made, your body, there's no limit. Because natural stuff, it doesn't matter. You're already acclimated to it through genetic superior selection. It's the man-made that your body attacks, not natural stuff. First scientific evidence indicates that those forms of radioactivity aren't potent carcinogenics. So, by the way, radioactive fallout from any kind of reactor, fuel pools, or anything else, is each atom is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So that statement there, that guy should lose his degree immediately for that particular statement. That's meant to manipulate, and he killed a lot of people because they believed him. Second, deep plowing of the soil will hopefully get rid of that material as well. Deep plowing. This is madness to even suggest that plowing somehow has a mitigating factor. Cancer risk, hopefully, of course, isn't the same as definitively. So meticulous monitoring is essential to ensure safety, restored public confidence. A nuclear wasteland is always a nuclear wasteland. That'll never change. You can't mitigate it. Still, some perspectives in order regarding damage caused by the leaks of radioactivity. Some perspective. So this was just, like, I'm not going through the story because he told endless lies on top of that. I'm just going through, he was overboard. He went way overboard. And apparently he must have a new position coming up or something. So he's starting to censor the stories. And I put that name there because that was one of the people, Peter Karakapa, said you got to eat over 700 pounds of spinach at the highest levels of contamination. We see numbers at 54,000 atoms a kilogram and way more than that of spinach. A single atom in your body eventually builds a tumor around it. It could take a year, it could take 10, 20 years. But eventually it's going to build a tumor around it. It'll attack it for the rest of life with white blood cells. And so that was the guy he was quoting anyway. A health physicist at the Polytech Institute in Troy, New York. So you got to eat 820 pounds of spinach at the highest levels to have any adverse side effects. These are the worst humans conceivable to say something like that. It's the most egregious betrayal imaginable. It will be a treat. So Paul Blunstein is a researcher at the Center for International Governance Innovations. International Governance Innovations. It's a think tank, isn't it? These views are his own. Yeah, sure they are. That's why you publish them, right? It will be a treat to eat the radioactive food from the nuclear wasteland, says Paul. He's a former Tokyo correspondent for the Washington Post. Is an author and research affiliated with the Brookings Institute, which is who Matt from last night's presentation on Stanford University is from. He's not a researcher, he's a serial killer. Craven Spinach. Anyway, that's the whole thing. You can read it at your leisure. You can go find the story and read it. I took the screen captures of all of it for posterity, for myself. And don't mind me because I'm crazy. No, like when I find stuff that really, where they're changing the narrative, and then because that's recirculated, that showed up in my search engine, I got a tendency to do that kind of vetting just to try to comprehend what was going on, and was he getting promoted to a position in government maybe or something like that? I don't know. Hi, everybody. Yeah. Yeah, and Japan's not even original, are they? They're really not. Most of their so-called technology is technology they just stole from another company, right? And they just re-engineered it. And then they're not really the best camera makers. They're not really the best motorcycle makers, right? They stole the technology. Fetterman calls for bombing Iranian nuclear facilities. Take the word Iranian out of that. Fetterman calls for bombing nuclear facilities, which means radioactive fallout, destroying the health and the ecosystem and the water worldwide. Waste that is something. Lawmaker declared to the Washington. He's an Israeli lapdog, right? He's a Zionist. You're never going to be able to negotiate with that kind of regime that has been destabilizing the region. The only people destabilizing the region is the Zionists, the transplanted Zionists that changed their last name to sound more Jewish. Believed to do that to strike and destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. You can't go destroying nuclear facilities, shithead. Because Iran's going to destroy Israel's nuclear facilities immediately before the planes even land in whatever small country they took off from. They're going to be destroyed in 6 or 12 hours too. You're not going to get away with attacking Iran. They said they're not tolerating it anymore. They already pummeled Israel twice. Israel just went down to Yemen, was it? I can't remember. And 20 fighter jets down there because their Ben Gurion airport got struck by a missile from 2,000 miles away that defeated 4 of the Zionists' anti-missile systems and struck their popular Ben Gurion airport in Israel. There's no way they can stop Iran from taking out Israel's nuclear plants and nuclear weapons sites. There's no way they can stop it. Iran is going to take out all of their water filtration systems, going to take all their power systems, going to take out their marines, cargo ship areas. That's all going to be taken out in one day. The nuclear plants are going to melt down on the same day. They're going to have to shelter in place across the whole country. And Iran can just pummel them with 1,000 drones, sophisticated missiles every day, and there's nothing they can do about it. They can destroy Iran all they want. They still can't stop all the weapons from thousands of miles of underground tunnels from being launched against them. Right? It's a very expensive process, And Israel will run out of material within a few days. It'll take them weeks to get resupplied. You know, they've never fought a real army, right? They never fought a real military or somebody that had an air force and a navy and an actual army and weapons and everything else. They've always fought people that couldn't fight back. That's the coward thing. See, they're notorious for it. Their whole legacy is predicated upon that. Destroy nuclear facilities. Yeah. Do you get any more stupider than this? I wonder. I can't understand why Trump would negotiate with the diseased regime. So this is a bigot, racist, prejudiced politician, right? The negotiation should be comprised of 30,000 bombs and the IDF. The IDF can't fight a real military, for God's sakes. Smarten up, boy. You shit for brains. What the hell is the IDF going to do against Iran? Jack shit. It's going to use Americans' weapons because they can't build their own planes. They can't build their own tanks. It's Israel. They can't do jack shit without stealing it. Who is a staunch supporter of the Zionist genocide Holocaust organization in the Middle East. Australia chose batteries over nuclear after elections fought on energy. No, that's just happened to be what one political side tried to fight it that way, right? Why would you use batteries? Because they have a lot of houses with solar panels. That's the pun you're looking at there. But your best storage would be deep compressed air storage. So you just dig mine shafts and compress air en masse, right? So you can power cities reliably for baseload energy. So it should be geothermal backed up with wind and solar. Wind and solar storage would be compressed air storage. There's no way you can lose. You can sit out, unless you got planes up there blocking the sun all the time. It's still going to produce power though, solar. Any attempt to restart Zaporizhia, and I butcher the name, sue me, should be regarded as an act of nuclear terrorism. Any kind of nuclear is nuclear terrorism, isn't it? Any attempts to restart power generations remains under Russian occupation must be regarded as an act of nuclear terrorism, said the terrorist head of state nuclear regulatory inspectors of Ukraine. You listen, you're going out and jacking children with Down syndrome, teenage girls to go out in fields where drones are going to come in, chase them in circles till they blow them up. You disgusting maggots. You revolting parasites. You spineless, subhuman, whatever species. You're not human. The plant lacks reliable water supply, stable external power. The Ruskies they're not going to start it up without it, stupid. Russia's one of the biggest suppliers in nuclear plants. They'll figure it out, I'm pretty sure. Genius. He also drew attention to the restricted access of the non-International Atomic Energy Agency. They're not experts. They're a corporation. We don't know nothing about these people. They don't have any sovereignty over any country. They're not a regulatory agency. They don't have any authority. Why does the International Atomic Energy Agency get even 1 second of anybody's time? Unless you're a corrupt organization like the INRA, which is the International Regulatory Association. This is another fly-by-night organization created by the industry, the insiders, to protect them from any scrutiny from outsiders like us. Established in 1997 as a forum for addressing nuclear radiation safety issues of mutual interest. Its member countries, without no referendum in any of the countries, these countries are signed on to an organization that doesn't have any authority either. It's no different than UN. Is to influence and enhance nuclear safety, they claimed. The only way you can do that is by being having a conspiracy, right? Other international nuclear organizations, International Atomic Energy Agency, they're not an international nuclear organization per se. They don't have any authority. They're not a regulatory agency. Why are you giving them 2 seconds of our time? Iran says they're not seeking a militarized nuclear program. And they're idiots if they don't. I hate nuclear weapons. I hate nuclear, period. If Iran don't get their hands on nuclear, they're going to look like Ukraine real soon. Maybe next week. Spain's nuclear lobby urges review of phased out Spain's nuclear lobbying, who half the fleet was turned off at the time, and that all the power that was available when they had the blackout started, it shouldn't have been a blackout. The only reason it was a blackout because the nuclear plants needed all the power they can get, including all the way to France, so they wouldn't melt down. Right? Because they had a station blackout with no power, no circulation. After 50 minutes, the fuel rods will heat up to the point where they start releasing huge amounts of radiation. Once the water boils off and oxygen is there, then things melt down in the fuel pools. And that's forever stuff for them. But Spain's nuclear lobbying urges review. Oh, I'm sure they do. Really. Nuclear power is needed to stabilize Spain's electrical system. The country should rethink. No, geothermal is needed. It's planned phase out last week, unprecedented. In fact, the president of Spain says nuclear is a dead duck as far as he's concerned. The head of lobby group Foro Nuclear, Araluce, said on Tuesday, some reactors were offline the day of the blackout, whose causes are being investigated. What are you talking about? Trying to make it sound as if somebody attacked the country, took these reactors offline. There was no reports in the media of it. I would have read about it. 3 reactors out of 7 were not in operation. 2 of them, because of the abundance of renewables, had lowered the energy prices. Do you get it? So they probably done a false flag against themselves so they can demonize renewables, making it too expensive to operate the disease factories, the nuclear power plants. La, 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 la. General Fusion lays off staff due to unexpected and urgent financing constraints here in Canada. And we know them, right? They've attacked me many times when I was out on the West Coast doing research expeditions of an extinction event. And urges and the time of more financial constraint. Canadian firm General Fusion, these are dirtbags by the way, is to lay off 25% of its 140-strong workforce. 35 employees. They knew that was coming. This is a company that shouldn't even exist in the first place. It exists under a technicality. Nuclear is illegal in British Columbia, Canada. One of the first private, but fusion wasn't because it was experimental. And has attracted more than $325 million, which they can't do jack shit with $325 million in nuclear industry. They can't do jack shit. All I can do is line their own pockets and suck in unsuspecting investors and rob them of any gain. From both private investors, including Amazon and the Canadian. Amazon only invests in that because the industry blackmails them. General Fusion announced plans to downscale its effort due to funding issues. They stole the money. See, 90% of the money gets stolen through administration, right? Nuclear-resistant donkey. Everything in the nuclear industry is a donkey, isn't it? Lots of donkeys in the nuclear industry. Blah, 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 blah. Let's keep her rolling. Nuclear-resistant donkey. Great. The drone. This is a drone, by the way. Bear with me here. I gotta turn the volume down for a second. When I get cold water, sometimes you get the big after, and I turn it down. Look at a genius writing. Capital Cajal. They always get the stupidest pictures, the journalists do, don't they? So this is a drone. It's got like a flat deck up there where they can throw a bunch of things on it. They can bring it up to the front lines. Because the drones are so good now, the flying drones will just come in. If there's a human there, it'll kill them, see? So this is also meant to be able to work in a nuclear wasteland. That's what this was all about. It's a donkey. For frontline resilience to nuclear warfare effects. Electromagnetic pulses. Like, you don't got to worry about this anymore. You got to worry about drones coming in and just blowing you up with conventional explosives, right? The drone comes in and hits those tracks, down she goes. You have no protection around the tracks whatsoever. And do you think for 1 second, because Google Eric Schmidt is making 1 million drones a month to blow the children up in Ukraine. Right? He's selling each drone for $400 to the Ukraine government. So $400 million a month for 1 million drones a month. That's how they're fighting the war. Just chasing people around trees till they catch up to them and blow them up with a drone. Like, we should fight this with every fiber in our body, because once this becomes normalized, then the police can justify chasing the criminal, the shoplifters and everybody else with drones down the road and blowing them up. I got no choice, but we got to be safe. Got to be safe. That's what the nuclear is, a donkey, right? Everybody in nuclear industry. That's what we should call them, donkeys. Actually, I like donkeys. They're very faithful, by the way. They live for a long time. They can live up to 75 years. And they're really good with all the other animals. Like, they make friend with every animal on your farm. And if you got a donkey when you were born, that donkey might outlive you. Imagine how good he know your habits, or she would know your habits. The drone core strengthens resistance to nuclear warfare effects like electromagnetic pulses, radiation spectrum, contaminated environment. Nuclear. So why not use them at Fukushima? Shit for brains. They can, and they're so powerful they can pull a SUV. Hanford ships treated nuclear waste. Treated? What are you talking about? Dehydrated? That don't make it any less horrifying. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, didn't we? Something about Hanford. The perpetual evil Department of Energy has completed 2 shipments of 2,000 gallons, so 4,000 gallons of treated. Let me get the Geiger counter out of the way for a second. Treated low activity, low compared to a fuel rod. Still lethal by the liter, just walking past it. Tank waste, sludge, radioactive sludge, the splitting atoms. From a Hanford site in Washington State to be solidified in grout. Well, like, if you take it and put it in tungsten or steel or stainless steel or something like that, it'll wreck that in about 30 years through the Wigner effect, the neutron bombardments. Grout will go a lot quicker. Grout. Basically, you're going to take a gallon of it, you're going to dehydrate it so you got a solid, and then you're going to just put it in a cement block. Like a serial killer would do to a body, right? You're going to put it in a cement block and then wash your hands of it. Now, what's interesting about this story, these dirty little scumbags, they said Hanford is home to 177 underground waste storage tanks. But they dumped 450 billion gallons of the same stuff at the same time as they built them tanks into 41 miles of underlying trenches, which is equal to 1.4 million of those 300,000 gallon tanks. But they got everybody fixated on 177. At the same time, they had dumped 1.4 million of them in the soil during the Manhattan Project. And the amount we're talking about is like an equal to an aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet more than once. And you know, Mayak done the same thing. You know, China's done the same thing. You know, scumbag Israel done the same thing. You know, India and Pakistan's done the same thing. You know, degenerate Canadian, the disgusting parasitic Canadian nuclear industry probably done the same thing to the Great Lakes. These include 149 single shell tanks, 28 double shell tanks. They buried them right down surface level with the ground because of the neutron bombardment, the militarise. The reality of it is these tanks weren't full of the crazy stuff because they know back then that if you put gammas, neutrons, betas, and alphas down into these things, they're just going to cause a chain reaction. And it'll burn through the tanks and you'll lose everything, which is what they claim they admit happened to some of the tanks. But why did they have 177 tanks, but yet they dumped 1.4 million tanks, the same size, the same material, into the soil? Because that was the scam, was to get you to look there, not at 1.4 million tanks they dumped into the environment. Spain expands the Corona nuclear storage. Spain is in the process now of, they're getting rid of the nuclear. The current administration, prime minister of the country, vehemently come out a few days ago, we covered it, a week ago or whatever, during that blackout, right? That the blackout, it was really interesting because he came out and reintegrated the renewable instead of nuclear. He disavowed the nuclear and said they're getting rid of nuclear. These so-called 50,000-pound containers have to be kept cool, like an air conditioner, because they can overheat. Not only that, in a couple of decades, you're going to have to put them in another container. And a couple of decades after, they're going to put them in another container. A couple of decades after, they're going to put them in another container. You do that forever. See the tall, skinny stack? That's where they pump the fuel pool emissions 24 hours a day into the local environment, which is typically surrounded by farms. The construction of ATI dry and temporary storage facilities was completed in 2017. The first used fuel was placed in the ATI in July 2022, 5 years later. It's a temporary storage. It's not a solution what they got done there. Right? It's the best that all the brightest idiots on the planet can come up with in the nuclear industry. They're not trying to come up with a solution. They don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about the species. Not one iota. At the same time, used fuel will be evacuated from the pool. So their fuel pools are still hemorrhaging radiation 24 hours a day up that tall, skinny stack. The industry just is your worst nightmare, and now it's got 80 years in on you. In the final phase 2, 2027 to 2033, the fuel already in the ATI, which is just a temporary storage solution, the final dismantling of radiological buildings will be addressed. Well, I hope they do good. Bless their hearts for killing nuclear in their country. I'll just let it go at that. But what the nuclear industry done to the country was it compromised every human in the country with autoimmune issues. Donald Trump 9-word ultimatum to Iran as nuclear warfares intensify. Total dismantlement. Dismantlement, yes, that is all I would accept. Iran's not going to dismantle their program. Why would they? Israel's just going to destroy the country if you do. It'll look just like Ukraine. It'll be worse than Ukraine. Land, sea, air embargoes, sanctions against the country for decades. Now they're banning all oil exports from the country, the United States, for Israel, because Israel told them to, and the United States government will only do what they're told when it comes to Israel, right? The 7,500 AirPac lobbyists have blackmailed every paid off every Senate congressperson. It's cheap, right? It's cheaper to do that than it is to go another route. I want Iran to be really successful, really great, really fantastic. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. The reason, because if they get a nuclear weapon, Israel can't go attacking everybody anymore. And Israel, that's all it knows. All it knows is conflict. That it's a self-perpetual machine too. Israel's a strange one. It's a strange story to Jews. They've been kicked out of over 2,000 countries because they're such wonderful people to get along with, apparently. They can't understand why 2,000 countries kicked them out. Man, there's denial and then there's the Zionists, right? A Zionist is somebody that affiliates themselves as a Jew, but they're not really a Jew, right? And the Israeli AirPac lobbying group pays a lot of money for people to convert themselves to Zionism. Like it's a coward society. Everything you look at, you don't see any stoicness whatsoever in the Israeli culture. There's no stoicness. It's all fake, right? The only thing they can't have, if you don't get a nuclear weapon, they'll be just worse than Ukraine soon. So I'm assuming they already got their nuclear weapons. Otherwise, nothing else makes sense. The only thing that makes sense is that Iran has nuclear weapons. I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon because the world will be destroyed. What are you talking about? That's what they said about North Korea recently too, right? The last decade. Oh, the world's going to be destroyed. Which was occupied by Japan for 50 years, North Korea. Then Nagasaki, Hiroshima happened. And then United Nations went in there and used more munitions than World War I total on that little tiny country to try to break them. And called it a police action. Millions dead, millions missing, millions in refugee camps, millions unaccounted for, millions of orphans. And then has land, sea, and air embargo against them for the last 75 years. So this is a country been ostracized for 125 years from society. And if they didn't get their nuclear weapon, they would be a lot like Ukraine today too. Japan reaches out to the United States, published 14 years ago. It was the same media which had retracted another story. I'm not sure if they retracted or republished. Retracted it rather. Many facets of that story. I went down the road and tried to find other stories. And look, Mari Yamaguchi. I couldn't find the other stories, so I wasn't able to make a comparison. But here they were right away saying Japan will maintain atomic power. They had 36 reactor cores just melt down, despite the country's ongoing nuclear crisis. The whole world, not Japan, is depending on them. Tokyo office worker Nori 44 set of emergency teams at the plant. Like, once their first reactor detonated, there's no going in and fixing anything. There's no going in salvaging. There's no going in firefighting or anything. It was over. Just stand back and wait for the rest of them to blow up. Right, that was the only thing you can do, That was the only thing you can do. This was the 15th. Everything was already gone. All the fuel pools were gone. The reactor cores were all gone in those 4 buildings. Once they blew up, that was it. You can't go back in and work there once you eject the reactor core and the fuel pools out of the buildings. I don't care who tells you how many degrees they got, what their pedigree is. Your organs melt. It doesn't matter how stoic and brave you are. It's simply not going to happen, right? They sure told a lot of lies in this story too, but should I really go down that road tonight? Because I do a lot of these stories in my own time where I don't cover them. I'm just reading through it. I screen capture just about everything I do. just for evidence sakes, right? For posterity evidence, and because that's just how my brain works. That way, if I have an epiphany later, I have the documentation I know stashed. And I got a really good memory. That's one of my curses. I got a great memory. It's an actual burden having a great memory, because you can never get peace, right? You remember all these details, and so there's a lot of triggers. I have a lot of triggers where, because it's like perpetual trauma doing what I'm doing, where you're reading all these heartbreaking stories, and you understand the significance of it, even though the media's job is to cover it up. You understand the enormous harm of it in so many ways, like so many flashes through your brain as you're originally reading the stories, and even after, of course, of the full spectrums of issues going to be caused by, this and that and everything, every story, every day. Like the dumps, 1 week after the quake and tsunami, well, everything was gone. And so the journalists worked unbelievably. The governments worldwide, the universities worldwide worked. The nuclear universities worldwide came out and spammed the internet for years. The students, the academics, the alumni, the professors. It was criteria for the classes, nuclear classes. And I can play video after video after video of the students still in school coming out telling you radiation is like a banana, so don't worry about it. I'm really safe here in class because it's like a banana. And you're just like, what kind of zombie monster is this industry? It creates all these zombies. Emergency crews facing two challenges. Cooling the reactors. You can't cool the reactors because they already blew up. This was a week later, right? The story. And cooling the adjacent spent fuel pool, which was the cover story. The fuel pool was ejected out of the building. And the other ones, they Meltdown. Reactor 1, they were ejected out of the building. Reactor 4 was ejected out of the building, and where they burnt so hot they dissolved the top of the buildings. And the entire inventories were lost. Like, I've been doing this so long. My narrative, I'm really careful of everything I say, how I say it, right? So that it can't be, the industry can't say, well, see, Dana said this, but it's not true, or Dana misrepresented this, because I'm used to them doing that to me over the years. They make it up all the time, right? But you become conscious of it, and you don't want to give them any wiggle room, so to speak. Both need water to keep the uranium cool and stop them from emitting radiation. This is the strangest framing of the words, emitting radiation, melting down from emitting radiation. So they make it sound like it's just going to be in that little spot here. This is the plume model covering the entire planet from the French, not a model, but a study. The French government, a spike of 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. That's covering the entire planet in 23 days. And the frightening facet of this is we have the models from all kinds of countries. Governments, of course, in the government institutions, the government models, and they're all the same. This was a study of 10, 20, 30 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. So if you were to have an alien invasion and the aliens came in and done something like this would be the perfect horror factual movie you can imagine. This would be the perfect weapon against a planet, was to come in and have the entire population breathing, drinking, surrounded perpetually by something that pulses energy 600 feet every second by the atom. An atom, you can put 200 million on the head of a needle, you can't see it. So imagine a single atom. And it pulses energy that can be found with a Geiger counter 600 feet away. Through your house, through your neighbor's house, and into your next neighbor's house, for instance, is easy. An atom, we don't have anything in the solar system with those attributes. Stardust doesn't have that attribute. The stuff we're made of doesn't have those particular attributes. That's what we call an anthropogenic man-made. And then your body recognizes that because it causes the damage. It has to try to repair the damage in your body every second, and it has to try to attack the source if it's in your body. If not, it's even worse again sometimes. Water's in at least one fuel pool in the complex Unit 3 is believed to be low. Unit 3 ejected the reactor core and the fuel pool right out of the building. That's not up for debate. I mean, the Fisher story is none of this happened. Everything I'm telling you, nothing happened. No matter what I show you, the Fisher story is it never happened. No matter what it is I show you, it never happened. That's the official story. As of 24th of last year. August 24th last year, was it? I can't even remember anymore, thank God. Without enough water, the rods may heat further. Like, these people are delusional because it's already gone and spew out radiation. It ejected the reactor core. The plume covered the entire planet. It doesn't spew radiation. It creates a plume that spreads out and within a few weeks covers, that's 3 weeks, covers the entire planet. Asymmetrically covering the entire planet at the one time. It's the equivalent of an invisible snowstorm, or a snowstorm, as you can see. If you had a snowstorm that had this particular attribute, where after 23 days the whole planet was covered in a perpetual snowstorm, it never stops snowing, and the snow never melts. How long before the whole planet figured out they got to wear winter's clothing? But because it's radiation, you can't perceive it. You can't see it or smell it or taste it or touch it. You can't perceive it. And that's what makes it an extinction event, is because you don't even try to defend yourself or mitigate the effects whatsoever. You're not aware of it. Everything just seems normal, except there's no birds or bees or insects or animals or mammals. All the whales are emaciated. All the birds are emaciated. And then you got these people coming out telling a story as if it exists. They're not going to show you any of these pictures. They're not going to show you these stories. On Thursday, military helicopters dumped thousands of gallons of water from a huge bucket. It needs 1 million gallons a minute, not thousands of gallons. Each reactor, on top of that, needs 1 million gallons a minute to keep cool before it runs out of control. And these ran out of control and detonated. And the videos are real. And radioactive fallout is real. And we just done MIT University, Harvard University, Stanford University, 3 shows in a row. Long shows, too. My apologies, everybody. Difficult shows, where many, many times the professor that was talking about Fukushima would have to stop each sentence 3 or 4 times because he told a lie and correct the lie. Then get another couple of words there, which would be another lie. Stop it, then correct that lie, then. Like, this is madness. It's the same thing with journalists, where you can't challenge every lie. I do it because I'm an idiot. Clearly, I'm a friggin' idiot. Obama appeared on television reassured that nothing was expected to happen, despite the fact that it's the most catastrophic event in human history. And Obama and his husband wrote a book, and they got like $400 million. Everybody had to go buy it because it was Obama. So they got tons of money legitimately, even though it's illegitimate. So then they created a movie to demonize the population on the planet, because why not? They just sentenced you to death by telling you nothing happened, so you had no way of protecting yourself. You didn't stay indoors. You didn't try to mitigate your exposures. Firefighting, water bomber, and rain help extinguish Cape Base brush fire. In all honesty, I don't even remember that story. Is that up Was that up by a nuclear reactor? But the problem with forest fires right now is they got 60, 70, 80 years of radioactive fallout sequestered in the trees and the leaves and the branches. So when you have a forest fire, you liberate that radiation back into the environment where it tries to hunt down anything with replicating cells and destroy them. Japan's nuclear crisis prompts U.S. iodine pill run. March 16, 2011. This is day 6. Iodine can't help you. All gammas are going to go in your thyroid, not just iodine. You have to get out of there. It's better to have a wet towel around your head than take an iodine pill. And the media, how many times, how many stories over the years, over the decades, have we heard them, media, claiming that this will protect you? And the iodine's still going in your body, it's still going to sequester in your muscles, your organs. It doesn't need to be in your thyroid to radiate your thyroid. Japan has 13,646 children out of 38,000 with thyroid tumors. I'm only laughing because it's an involuntary reflex. It's the gallows laugh. And what that means, though, because they got 2 centimeter tumors on their thyroids, which are only 2 centimeters, is they're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their life. And when you can't just have gammas, so you have to assume that they're producing radioactive stem cells for the rest of their life too, because that's be appropriate, and you'll be accurate. And it's worse for the species. This industry will destroy everything. It doesn't need a nuclear meltdown, and it had a share of them. Fukushima was a pulse event of 36 reactors melting down at one time. How many strangers have called into my show that have been rational? And added to the conversation, right? Strangers, none. Never. It's never happened. How many nuclear scientists have called into the show and corrected me? None. You know why? Because I don't talk about shit I don't know nothing about. What's the point? You can't run an educational program talking about stuff you don't know nothing about. My detractors are literally like imbeciles. They're literally like 6-year-olds or 12-year-old imbeciles whose parents say works for the nuclear industry, so they feel empowered and they lash out at me, right? They're literally imbeciles, the people that are my detractors. We really don't, there's no coherence in anything they got to say. It's always just an insult. There's never anything tangible. There's never anything articulated. It's nuclear industry, Dana. What did you expect? I know. Good point, actually. Thank you. The degenerate industries, the UN, anything UN is just a disgusting parasite. Most experts in atmospheric science says very little radiation could end up in the United States. Even though the winds are blowing the radiation out into the Pacific. See, this is the deception. Thousands of miles to the United States, Thomas Teforty, President of the National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements. The President of the National Council of Radiation Protection and Measurements said there's no way it can get from Japan to here. They're going to get dispersed pretty widely. Yeah, they covered the whole planet. Instead of French government at 1 million to 10 million atoms times pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. That's a study. Spike. And the problem is that if you go look at all the Mayo Clinic, the heads of the Mayo Clinic, we've covered the heads of all of these organizations. These people are monsters. They're the ones that are going to come out and cut your throat. They're the monsters. They're in the key positions right on your entire planet. It's unbelievable, right, how insidious this industry actually is. And every facet of this industry. The bottom plume model is 35 days. Oh, I'm sorry, 25 days or something. March the 18th at the top, you can see day 7. Day 11, March the 22nd. Day 14, March the 25th. 14 days, the whole planet's covered in that model. Dan Jaffe, University of Washington, both tell atmospheric chemists study pollution patterns across the Pacific from Asia for 20 years. Yeah, radiation is the only plume where it covers the whole planet in a short period of time. All the other pollutions can cover thousands of miles, but because they're big, they're heavy, they follow pretty easily. It says possible radiation from a major meltdown of one or more nuclear reactors could reach the Puget Sound, 5,000 miles away, but said there was no health risk. He said, I can't imagine a scenario where radiation release would be big enough to be a health. Fukushima plume shot a million atoms study now. The West Coast after explosions. Nuclear industry tried to bury the truth. UK Berkeley, UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley University, told the public there is no plume. Layman, who we've covered too many times to even count, with the Union of Unconcerned Scientists, Global Security Program, expert on nuclear plant design. As for the United States, it's unlikely, even worst case scenario, there would be significant health effects for people. There was 20,000 people died in the first couple of weeks of heart attacks. It was a spike of excess people dying from heart attacks, for instance. There was a spike of infant mortality right across the entire Pacific coastline. Unlikely, even worst case scenario, he said. Unlikely. 20 million particles of radioactive iodine. That's 20 million pulses of energy a second per liter of iodine-131. And for every iodine-131, there's 10 times more iodine-132, 30 times more iodine-133, 31 times more iodine-129 in the same plume, right? Iodine-129 per liter, 220 million atoms. This is like, this is the stuff nightmares are made of. Even an alien invasion and a nuclear war pre-Fukushima, you still wouldn't imagine these type of numbers. Right? There's no literature on this kind of stuff pre-Fukushima. I've been at it for 23 years. And when I was younger, I was pretty rough around the edges of... I really didn't like the nuclear industry back in those days. Because I thought the planet, I still do, of course, and always will, the planet needs to fight back. You have to fight back. You have to appreciate that nobody's coming to help you. You need to fight back. You're obligated. It's your obligation. It's your responsibility. Energy Secretary Stephen Cho, this is back on day 5 or something of Fukushima. Well, governments in Switzerland and Germany took steps to curtail their nuclear energy program because nothing happened, right? Clearly. Chung told the House Appropriations Subcommittee Energy Water Development the United States must rely on nuclear power for their weapons, right? They need the tritium for their weapons to keep them relevant. We'll continue to push 36 billion loan guarantees to help power companies build more plants as the entire country was being saturated with radioactive fallout. Rescue teams reach tsunami-stricken towns in Japan. It's taken 5 days for rescue teams to clear a path to the wreckage of a town, and there's surreal sights at every turn. There's some crazy pictures coming up in a minute. A tugboat weighing thousands of tons tossed into someone's yard. Cars suspended from second floors. You'll see that coming up in a second. Unless you're actually here, you can't believe it. The pictures don't do it justice. The tsunami was really something, right? It went right through the power plant on top of that. I remember the heartache of seeing it in real time as it was happening. I put out a video, right, as it was happening. This, by the way, is the nuclear power plant. So when the when the waves finally go out, they came in at 500 miles per hour. When that finally goes out, do you really think the nuclear plant is not going to be torn apart? It's an interesting picture, isn't it? You look at your kitchen window, everything's gone. Not only that, a lot of these places were nuclear wastelands. They couldn't go in and get the bodies in a lot of places for months because of radioactive fallout. It's like a big wood chipper. Everything went through a wood chipper for the most part, isn't it? And so a lot of people were appropriately distracted, right? How could you not be caught up into that? So it's difficult to appreciate nuclear at the same time, right? When you're looking at stuff like this, nuclear doesn't, for 99.9% of the people, nuclear has no meaning whatsoever to them. Like you say nuclear to somebody, zero happens inside their head. Like even intelligent people, there's zero comprehension of a nuclear event. They have zero comprehension. This picture, there was a couple of these pictures. He was getting pulled away from vending machines. He was trying to catch his balance. Now you can see him on the card there. And you can be sure he didn't survive that. Whoever took those pictures, let's look at that again, right? Imagine knowing that you're about to get crushed. Normal everyday street, every day, all of a sudden water is everywhere in 10, 20 seconds. And somebody takes your picture, that's probably the last time anybody's ever seen you. It's absurd. Harvard rushes to aid Japan. Didn't we cover Harvard a couple of days ago? Harvard University's presentation about Fukushima? Oh, yeah, that was not last show. Yeah, it was the last show. Oh, did you take down my Stanford video? What the frig is going on here? Where's my Stanford video to? Oh, I didn't refresh the page from yesterday. That's such a great thing, eh? I have a dedicated external computer. I used to unplug the one out front and bring it in just to run the background, right? Because YouTube, you have to have I can't run YouTube on my operating system or any kind of browser whatsoever. It's just for doing these types of shows, presentations. Editing too is really good with editing. Harvard rushed to aid Japan. So Harvard was 2 shows back. I had done a 4-hour and 15-minute video on where we audited Harvard's response to Fukushima from 2011. And the reason it takes so long, because the original video was like an hour, it took me over 3 hours to go through all the laws and provide you with the documentation. Because I'm an idiot. I'm a sucker for punishment, right? Really, there's no other way to describe how much torture I does myself outside of that. Clearly, I'm an idiot. And to keep beating the shit out of myself for doing what I'm doing every day. I miss the species, eh? Let's keep her rolling here, because it's a good thing I done the show early tonight, because there was no way I would have made it. Because my usual time is 10 p.m. my time. And so my shows are usually over at midnight. Which is tough on an old feller like me, right? I'm not getting any younger. So this was March the 17th. Web portals, discussions, benefits are being held in response to quake-created tragedy. And every time you hear any stories you read about Fukushima is going to be tsunami, quake before nuclear, right? Because they want to blame it. They don't want you to think that the nuclear industry has any flaws. Harvard president Faust expressed support for those caught in the destruction. Really? And so then, and I done a video, 4 hour, 50-minute video there a few days back, and they couldn't care less about Japan. They lied about every facet of it to protect the nuclear interests for Harvard University. And because I'm an idiot, I just done Harvard University, MIT University, and Stanford University audits of their presentation post-Fukushima because I'm such a sucker for punishment. Man, that was a brutal go, wasn't it? A lot of hours punched. How many hours did we punch in just to get through those 3 presentations? I don't even want to think about it. 7.5, 7:45, 8, 9, 10. So that's 11 hours in 3 videos. Ow. That's why everything hurts the last couple of days, I think. Like today, my whole body's like I ran a marathon or something. I wasn't even going to do a show tonight. I was like, oh, fuck it. I don't even care. I just beat the shit out of myself for 3 shows. I need to recover. And then like an idiot, I was like, I'm going to pass out. But I better do a show before I pass this out. And here we are. Well, we're an hour and 40 minutes almost in. That's pretty cool because I'm definitely burning out again. A Czech court has blocked electricity firm, the French government, which is who owns that firm. Let me get this straight. From signing a contract worth at least 18 billion. Oh, the Czech court has blocked the firm, the electricity firm that was going to build nuclear reactors in the Czech Republic. $18 billion contract. They were about to sign it with South Korea's. South Korea, don't use them reactors. Those reactors are stupid, for goodness sakes. And don't use the CANDU Canadian reactors. But the South Korean reactors, they're terrible reactors. To build a new nuclear power plant until there's no such thing as a good reactor, mind you. Only good reactors when it's not built. Until the court has handled a complaint from the losing bidder, France. Oh, France all sucky, baby. Should the reactors they were going to build here, they won't even build them in their own country. Right? That's probably why they want to give France a chance to win in the Supreme Court so they can build those dirty reactors like they're building in the United Kingdom, right? But I wouldn't trust those little short South Koreans. It's not that they're short, there's a reason. It's just, I wouldn't trust the nuclear industry, particularly an Asian nuclear industry. Very corrupt people. They're not nice to have in your country, on top of that. They're very dirty people. They don't take many showers. Come on, Daddy, you're just making shit up to get at the nuclear industry. It's true. It's true. I was just being an arsehole. I'm sorry. I don't really do that too often, though, so I should be entitled to do it once in a while. You know, I got hurt when I was a diver, right? And I was in the workers' compensation facility, in pretty rough shape, right? And anyway, workers' compo was having a big meeting there at this night, and they're normally never there at nighttime. And there's this pattern every couple of weeks they would have these meetings, and they were bringing in these supervisors, and all these head honchos were coming in for the meeting. And this facility had a big catering unit. but they were typically closed after supper. And so they had produced a whole bunch of cafeteria type, very high grade stuff, by the way, like cakes and it was all kinds of stuff anyway. And then they had coffee machines. And I had known this meeting was going to come up, so I had a friend give me a ride to the mall, and I bought all the X-Lax they had, chocolate X-Lax, because the coffee machine is very busy, right? When they have their little breaks, they have their breaks after each speaker or something. And so I stole all the toilet paper from the bathroom stalls. They had this, like 7 or 8 stalls there in that particular bathroom, and the women's. And I had all the coffee machines were stuffed with X-Lax, and so was the cakes. And I look back and I'm ashamed of myself. So anyway, it was like a half an hour before the night was over, and all these people were coming out and going into the bathroom, and you can just hear them just disbelief there was no toilet paper. And it was really something, man. I got them good. I got them good, that one. They were scumbags, eh? EDF complaint blocks to check. I'm not kidding you, by the way. EDF complaint blocks to check. Who's going to make up a story like that, by the way? EDF complaint blocks the Czechs Korean nuclear deal. EDF complaint, which is the French government complained that they didn't get the $18 million contract. $18 billion contract. Multi-billion-dollar deal. And look at the picture they show you. Nuclear plants surrounded by farms as far as you can see. Those two skinny stacks, they're pumping from the on-site incinerator where they incinerate nuclear waste. There's a legal limit they're allowed to incinerate without having to report it. And the emissions from the fuel pools are pumped up those tall, skinny stacks. And this is why they're surrounded by farms. And you see that particular attribute worldwide, by the way. The majority worldwide, the nuclear plants are surrounded by farms as far as you can see. If the deal was signed, EDF would lose a chance to compete for the contracts for good, even if the court ruled in favor later on. So there's a big incentive. There's a big incentive. Deal cannot be signed until the court passed a verdict on the case. And so the Korean degenerate has offered to build the 2 nuclear units for $9 billion each. Well, no matter what the estimate is, you want to at least quadruple it to be realistic. Right? Because it's all about stealing money through administration with this industry. Right? So the minute they announce they're going to build a plant, then you're going to see all these vultures show up because they know it's easy pickings for hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's easy to steal it. The Israel cabinet approves conquest plan to recapture all of Gaza. Conquest. They pulverized the entire country of Palestine. They pulverized it. They destroyed every university. They destroyed every museum. They destroyed every archaeology institution in sight. They destroyed everything with the word Gaza on it, everything with the word Palestine on it. They destroyed the currency, all the banks. They looted all the banks. They poured cement down every freshwater well they can find and filled it up. A systematically stripping of a culture, of a people. They systematically erased the legacy of the people from graveyards, all bulldozed over and buried. All the tombstones bulldozed, ran over with the big bulldozers, the big yellow. I've never seen nothing like it. Just, it's evil. And the people themselves, they justify it. the citizens of the country constantly just go ahead and justify it. Yeah, they're animals. Really. Locked up in a barrel, and you sat there and shot them in the barrel with no way to get away from the bullets for your whole time there. And they're the animals, are they? Really? You people are idiots. How you can look at each other and smile is just bizarre. The conquest of the Gaza Strip and moving the enclave remains population to the south for their protection. Going to move the victims into the south for their protection. Wherever you told them to move right up until now, when they got there, you bombed them right away. Their tents, you dropped grenades down on their tents. Right, the homeless shelters, you've been doing that lately. We've seen all the videos of that showing up. You're the farthest thing from what you claim you are as you can get. There's nobody on the planet now that gives two shit about you on top of that. And that's on purpose, I would imagine. Part of the Torah in Talmud is that the world will turn against Israel. Self-fulfilling prophecy by the looks of it. The plan was unanimously approved by Benjamin Netanyahu and some of the other ultra-whack jobs, right? The ultra-orthodox Jews, the headbangers who never read anything on the Torah and the Talmud. The decision made overnight, no referendums for them guys, came hours after the military announced it was calling up tens of thousands of their so-called reservists are like Jews or Zionist children, usually from North America and Europe. These are not your traditional type reservists we're talking about. Conquest of the Palestinian and the Gaza Strip. Netanyahu and several Israeli ministers unanimously approved the plan. Right, the military-industrial complex approved the plan, did they? Wow. Wow. Holy. Including powerful strikes against the Palestinians without specifying their nature. Well, they're not going to be able to fight back, so what's... Not like Israel's worried about them. They can't fight back. There we go. We're almost there, right? I mean, I got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more to get through. That's the show. That's it. That's cool. I got an early night for a change. Militants in the territory still holds 58 hostages. Israel has at least 100,000 dead under the rubble and another 52,000 confirmed. Mostly women and children. They never had nothing. Because that's all Israel is good for, right? Why you'll hear a siren today, what to know about the emergency testing. And look at her with a big stupid grin on her face like she's a human or something. Within 10 miles, there's 96 sirens. That's because of 3 Mile Island, they got the sirens, right? That was the concession. They're not going to use it if they have a nuclear accident. It can melt right down to China. They are not going to use those sirens. Zilch possibility they're going to use those sirens. In the event of emergency, residents who hear... You won't hear the sirens. They're not going to use it. Don't waste your breath thinking about it. They're never going to use it no matter where's to. They're not going to use their sirens. And a couple of examples of actual events... They said the sirens were an accident. Everything's fine. Turns out it wasn't at all. I mean, these are just... I can't call them animals because animals are pretty wonderful and pretty smart. These are not wonderful and they're not smart, these people. It's a sickness. The nuclear industry is a perpetual sickness of mentally ill. That's all we're seeing anyway. Wow. Should you avoid eating Japan's deadly nuclear food so you don't get radiation sickness and die? That's not a game. It's a serious business we're talking about, right? You need to take a magnifying glass. Just go buy one of the cheap ones and always keep it in your vehicle when you're going into a shop. When you're going into a shop and you're going to buy something bulk like rice or something like that, make sure you read everything on that label. Make sure it's not from China. And your cell phones now have an ability. You can take a picture of the description and you can put it up on your screen. Now you don't even need a magnifying glass. You can read it that way. But you can also search it online right quick and determine whether it's from Japan, right? They're shipping it to other countries with the relabeling and shipping it onto you. It's going to be very hard to figure that out. But if you at least do that much, you can protect yourself a little bit. At least you tried. Oh. See, James got another song here. Let's go watch that. We're at, just gotta hang on for a minute first. Hang on. Gotta kill another 2 minutes before we do that. Because that brings me up to my 2-hour window. I can feel good about, I got another 2-hour show in, right? Oh, well, we made it through the night. Man, I was trying to I got a few things done today. And that was cool. Let me see here. Ooh, righty. Japan is crazy. Don't criticize the government or TEPCO guides in Fukushima, we're told. That's such a free society. Man, I can tell you horror stories about how Japan's society treats girls growing up. Disgusting. It's unbelievable how evil that society actually is. It's a society of just nothing but shame, eh? Okay, looks like we're almost ready. Alright, let's go over and catch a song. James got queued up already. On YouTube, he's got over 300 songs. Really, that song came out so good, The Enrichment Man. I happen to like that kind of stuff, right? But it really is a great song. It's a very educational song, a very important song, and a very useful song, I think, for if you play that for somebody, they're going to really like the song. And they're going to say, hey, I want to hear that again. And they might start listening to other anti-nuclear songs. James got over 300 anti-nuclear songs. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Okay, so this is his new video. I'm just going to make sure I'm at 1080. I'm going to control the volume for you. Entirely based off this line from the article, releasing radiation contaminated water in Fukushima is not an environmental issue, but a political issue. Yeah, I read that, actually. Is it going to be the same? Yeah, that's right. The Organization for World Peace. And they put out a couple of doozies this week, didn't they? International response to Fukushima water release. And they're saying it's a political issue, that there is no radiation to be worried about. So the story is based on a real event. Now, you know, I've done the research expeditions. Just bear with me. Just bear with me. Before we do that, let me just remind the world that we are not restricted to what we're doing right here. I actually do research expeditions for a decade, for 6 years in British Columbia and also on the East Coast in the Atlantic. So for 6 years, I went from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska, 27,000 islands, 4 to 5 months a year without coming home, studying the species. And so what we discovered, the species to your left have disappeared. So I went back year after year to see if the species to your left recovered, and they didn't. So we're, after 6 years, now, you know how the ocean works. How the ocean works is if you took a glass of water, there'd be 1 billion creatures. It'd be the eggs and larvae, the sperm of all the species to your left, right? In 2011, that's what it looked like to your left. Those species now are exterminated. They didn't recover. And I spent 6 years looking for the species to your left. And so a glass of water would have 1 billion creatures. 75 to 100 million would be the phytoplankton, the basis, the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. The other 900 million creatures in a glass of water would be the eggs and larvae, the sperm of all these thousands of species. So that's an extinction event. We've done that for 6 years. Field studies. All right. So I'm going to adjust the volume for you on my side. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see you on the next show. You have a great night now. We'll see. Hopefully tomorrow night.
Containment claim.
determined by international safety standards.